Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from YellowCat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. What was the fastest way you saw someone get fired? Part 5. I got myself fired before I even got hired almost 9 years ago. It was a short-term move for me from Las Vegas to Central California. I had no money and no job prospects. Of course, I was desperate for work. I had made a terrible choice by moving and I wanted to change things in my life. Up until now, I had mostly worked in delivery or storage, but I was looking for work in those areas anyway. As a hobby I've always had, I went into a nearby computer repair shop and asked the owner if he was hiring. He said no at first because he didn't know I was talking to the owner. He then changed his mind and said, "You know what? I don't really have money for an employee. In a few days, you should come in and I'll see what I can do. I'll pay, of course, whether you hire me or not." I thought that was cool. Have a nice time. In the meantime, I got another job offer for an IT job that I wasn't qualified for at all, but it looked like a great chance. When I asked if we could move the interview to a different day, he said he didn't have time that week and needed someone right away. And this is where I messed up. The only way I could call the guy I was supposed to start for was to go in that morning and ask if we could move the date. I didn't write down the business name or phone number though. He likely would have told me to F off anyway, but I wanted to do something. I guess I didn't do anything because I'm a jerk. I have no idea what my thought process was at that time. I just got back from that other interview, which happened to be his usual lunchtime, so we ate and talked nicely. When the interview was over, he gave me the keys to his office, a credit card in his name, and told me to see him tomorrow. Seemed so strange, and I wasn't sure if I was being pranked. I thought, what the F happened here all night? There are no plans for me to leave my job because I'd still work for him. He threw me in with the wolves even though he knew I wasn't very experienced. I messed up a few times and admitted it, but I spent all of my waking hours at first researching everything I could to make it work. I think he almost let me go in the first 2 weeks. I taught this cute Irish girl how to do S at a restaurant in Toronto. She was cool and funny and she picked it up quickly. As the shift was coming to an end, 6 hours in, her manager called to ask if she could bring in some paperwork to get her tax records in order. She says that she's in Canada on a vacation visa and was hoping to get paid cash to work without a permit. Oh, sorry, see you later. I guess I didn't even get paid for those 6 hours. It was sad for everyone, even the manager, but he wasn't going to risk anything. Same restaurant, new busboy got fired at the start of his second shift after cameras caught him pocketing a phone left on a dirty table. The next day, customers asked about it again, and the owner looked at the cameras. A jerk. In a wealthy neighborhood, I know he went to the more expensive school across the street, and I saw him work in the register at the pharmacy in the same plaza. I also heard he got a girl pregnant when he was 19 years old. The same day they start, the guy came in for a trial at a job I had for a few years. It was a night shift job, which meant I worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The business manager was planning to leave and was on vacation at the time in a couple of months, but we needed a replacement manager before he could. The owner, who was a jerk, would take over for a short time, but he couldn't handle it himself because he was a jerk, so yeah, we needed a replacement manager. Anyway, I'm about 22 or 23 years old at the time. I had worked there for a few years, and the manager, not the owner, had been considering me as a possible replacement. It wasn't my deepest desire or anything, but I would have gone for it. Anyway, I was learning how to be more independent by taking on all the duties. It was an industrial fruit market, and one of the stores was dedicated to selling mushrooms, but only the edible kind. I was in charge of stock, setting up sales with potential customers, serving customers, and picking orders all at the same time. I think I was pretty good at it too. Anyway, one day the owner hires this guy to try out for the job of manager, which is the job I thought I was most likely going to get. I didn't really care about being manager anyway, so what the heck. However, the person he brings in is younger and much less smart than I am. It was annoying, and what was worse was that they clearly didn't know anything about the business and would be paid more than me right away. The most annoying thing is that the owner didn't do his job and look for good candidates. Anyway, the new guy tries to connect with me because we're both about the same age and talks about cars, which is fine, but I already know a lot about cars, so that didn't really work. That is, until he sees that I have a wedding ring on and wants to know about that, and all this other stuff about how lucky I am. After that, he started telling strange things about everything. He talked about how he needed this job because he and his girlfriend fight all the time and something else. There were hints of abuse all over the place. It was a little red flag. I get that you want to make things better with your partner, but this was just plain weird. The owner then told him to help us by picking up orders and making plans with the delivery drivers because, as he saw it, the new guy needs to know how the business works before he can manage. Look, I guess it's true, but you'd think he'd have done this kind of thing before if he was interviewing him for a manager job, could be? Anyway, the owner told the new guy to take orders. "No, I don't work," said the new guy. "I tell people what to do." Talks down to you and tries to explain what a manager is. Here, this is a big no-no. Instead, the manager would work with everyone and everyone would share the work. We all depended on each other because the business was so small. Even bosses chose what to do and were pretty much equal in some ways. Anyway, the new guy gave up and began taking orders. Keep in mind that this is all from the first hour he was there, and he was already late. This is when he starts talking about how he abused his girlfriend, or how her girlfriend abused him, or whatever he was talking about. He just gave off really bad vibes in general. You could tell they were a real loser. Anyway, maybe 30 minutes later. "Hey, where's the bathroom?" Now he's back after a 10-minute break. Then 20. After 30 minutes, after an hour, and then 2. Yeah, he never came back. Soon as he realized he wouldn't be able to boss people around like a 20-year-old jerk with no experience, he ran away screaming. Anyway, someone new was hired, and he was the effing worst person ever. I haven't worked there in over a year, so yay! Funny thing is, that new owner who basically fired me didn't stay in the job for more than a month after I left, but that's a different story. Why do your neighbors and/or your HOA have such a bad reputation? Part 5. For more than 35 years, my parents have lived in our house. They are only the second people to own it. The house was only about 5 years old when they moved in, and our street was the only one that had been built on at the time. I remember going for walks around the neighborhood as a child and seeing all the new houses being built. Only about 3 households have lived here longer than my parents. In fact, I've lived here longer than 95% of my neighbors because I've lived here my whole life. Many younger couples have moved in and tried to set up an HOA over the years. In this middle-class neighborhood, most of the homes are the same color and style, but each one has its own quirks that make it unique. But there isn't a single lawn in our subdivision that looks bad or isn't well taken care of. Many of the newer residents were either not interested in or in favor of an HOA, but most of the households that have lived here for years were against one. To start the HOA, everyone has to agree on it. This is why every time it was brought up, it failed because of people who didn't want it to happen, like my parents. As it turned out, some power-hungry jerk didn't like that my parents and other people were holding out, so they told the city about our properties anonymously, citing old rules that applied to everyone. The lilac and forsythia bushes on our corner had to be taken down because they obstructed the line of sight of other cars coming the other way. Which was completely false because the bushes were only about 3 feet high and my parents took good care of them. Also, if you were stopped at the line, you couldn't see them at all, but the city agreed with the complaint even though the bushes have been on that corner for 40 years and there has never been a problem. I told next door about this problem and got a lot of support about the bushes. Then my dad cut down a dead tree on our lawn. 2 days later, someone complained about the pile of wood on the lawn. The complaint was made because the city was told the pile had been there for a while and there were no plans to take it down. My dad had already arranged for a friend to come get the wood within the next couple of days. Finally, someone told us that they could see our trash cans from the street on days when they weren't being used. Really? Every house does the same thing, which is to put them against the house and to the side. This was pointed out to the city and they dropped their complaint. However, my dad still built a fence to hide the bins. Okay then. That's how our non-HOA tried to act like an HOA. All of this story doesn't make sense. I used to live next door to a very mean old woman who may have been showing signs of dementia. Not at all. She was always upset about something small. The amount of fuss stayed the same. What was being talked about changed. The last thing that made us fight was our recycling bin. We were to move it to the other side of our house because she thought it looked bad. She had nowhere to throw away the junk mail that she used to come in from the park next door after we helped her. It was because she didn't believe in recycling that she wouldn't get her own bin. She always used ours, but since it was in our fenced-in backyard, she couldn't get to it. That made her mad. She was very angry when I told her that I didn't think her situation was our problem. She started a campaign of small things that made people mad. Setting trash down under our bedroom window, yelling at us as they walked back and forth outside our living room, letters from her lawyers that all began with, "Our client has instructed us to inform you," which I know means this is crap, but I'm getting paid to write it. I was sick of this, so I set up a security camera to catch her acting badly. I was nervous around this older woman because I didn't want to look like the mean girl she was calling me. In order to prove that she was wrong, I needed proof. It was quick. She saw the camera right away and called the police because we were watching and scaring an old lady. When the police came over, I told her what was going on and showed her that the camera was pointed at the path outside her bedroom. She was okay with that. She agreed that toxic lady's behavior was a pattern of harassment after I told her about it. She also offered to talk to the old lady about how to be a good neighbor. I thought the old woman would deny everything and make it a case of he said, she said, but she was proud of herself. She agreed with everything I said and said more. She added a few things that happened that I didn't say because I thought it would make things seem silly or because I hadn't noticed them yet. She went into great detail about the whole story. She was probably thinking that because she was almost 90, it was a good thing to do instead of a crime. She was told to stop by the police officer. We didn't see her outside the house again until the day after we moved out. They decided to sell the house just a few weeks after showing us a plan to completely fix it up. I think they were both sick of her just as we were. We were given a chance to make an offer. We politely said no. On the last day, I had to work late, so my significant other went back alone after work to move out the last few things and take pictures to send in for the security deposit. She promised the neighbor that she would get her in a lot of trouble for trespassing, so she did. At that point, our lease still had 2 weeks left. There was a disagreement between neighbors regarding a fence after a new neighbor moved in and fenced off his backyard, which was completely acceptable and not a problem at all. Grumpy neighbor became enraged and claimed that it blocked his views. We live in the suburbs where there are no views, and when he refused to take it down, the grumpy neighbor claimed that his side of the fence was on their property. The side fence had been there for approximately 20 years, which is a significant amount of time before the new neighbor moved in. The new neighbor was required to pay money in order to have a surveyor come out, and it turned out that the irritable neighbor was correct. The side fence was on his property by approximately 30 centimeters or 12 inches at the back fence, but the front of the fence was actually on the property of the new neighbor by approximately 50 centimeters. The irritable neighbor was asked by the new neighbor if he wanted this to be fixed, and the new neighbor pointed out that the fence on each of their properties would make the cost of doing so unjustifiable. The irritable neighbor insisted that it be fixed, and they were both required to pay for the repairs. The new neighbor then informed the irritable neighbor that his mailbox was located on his property and that it would be necessary to relocate it. Angry neighbor inquired as to whether or not it would be acceptable to leave it there. No, you should move it. After that, the new neighbor informed the irritable neighbor that all of his utilities, including the plumbing and electrical wiring that ran parallel to his driveway, were actually located on his property as well. This grumpy neighbor had to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars to dig up along the driveway and move the utilities 12 inches over. The entire thing was due to a stupid fence. If you want to watch the part 4, click the link here. We're very, very glad to see you all in the comments again. Many, many thanks for your support.